Hey everybody, it's Mike Walsh, your host of Talking Catholic. And I know, every time I'm the first person to lead into an episode, I always apologize and say, I'm sorry that this is happening. But I'm sorry on a number of levels today, because not only is the podcast where you hear my voice first, we're actually also doing this as a video cast. So you'll be able to see it later on our Talking Catholic YouTube page at youtube.com/Talking Catholic, where we have a number of shows, short format shows, usually about 5 to 10 minutes on a variety of different subjects. One of them, my co-host Kari Janisse hosts on a regular basis, called Youth Ministry Insights, which I encourage you to watch, and all of our shows are on the YouTube channel. But today, this is our podcast, and we're doing it as a special podcast because it's our 200th podcast. Every time we've hit 100, some 100 metric, we've done a special. Now, usually what we do is a live podcast, live recording of a podcast, but obviously in COVID times, that's really not going to happen. So we're going to do something different. We're going to do it as a Zoom call that you'll be able to watch later. And we've invited all my hosts on, and we've also invited some of our favorite, and in my case, least favorite guests from the last year onto the show, just to sort of give their reflections. And we want to talk a little bit about where we want to go in the future with the podcast, as well as our YouTube channel and our Talking Catholic enterprise. Let's call it our multi-channel, broadcast empire that we're trying to create here. So the first thing I want to do is bring on some of my co-hosts who not only are celebrating with me the 200 episodes of the Talking Catholic podcast, but they're also celebrating with me a belated 1-year anniversary of them joining the show. For the first 130 episodes that we did, my original co-host, Pete Sanchez, now award-winning podcaster of the Talking Saints podcast with his friend Lori Power. They've been working on that as a monthly podcast that we do on a regular basis. So my 3 new co-hosts joined me on October 9th of last year of 2019. And the idea of bringing them on sort of midway through our run was I was looking to change things up a little bit. You know, Pete and I are both journalists by trade. So we kind of only knew what we knew. So we wanted to bring on people with different perspectives to co-host the show with me. So we brought on McCusker from Catholic Charities, Kari Janisse, who's a youth minister, and Marianela Nunez, who works in our school's office, thinking that we were sort of gets the overview of the entire diocese. So what I'd like to do is reintroduce the 3 of them to you, starting with Kari. Kari, how are you today?
Hey, Mike, I'm doing great. My good friend, Mike Walsh.
Oh, it gives me chills every time you say that.
Yeah.
And Mary McCusker, how are you doing today? Oh no.
I'm well, Mike, and I can hear your echo from the vault next door to where I am right now, but I am well.
You're right. I should have introduced myself as being in the vault today. Yes, I'm coming to you from the vault. And lastly, Marianela Nunez, how are you?
Well, Mike, thank you for doing this special podcast for our 200th episode and our anniversary. We're happy.
That's wonderful. Now, Mary McCusker, you were the first on the show, and I'm kind of curious, what was it like recording that first episode as a host back in October?
Terrifying. Just like the first episode you ever recorded of Talking Catholic with Pete, you picked me as the guinea pig, and it was nerve-wracking then, and it is still a little bit nerve-wracking now, but it is something that I've come to enjoy a lot. I was thinking about it earlier, and just thinking about the people I've brought onto the podcast. A lot of them are my coworkers who I see and talk to day in and day out. And, I don't want to use the word small talk, but we have meaningful conversations, but we never really have a chance to sit down and for me to ask them, what makes you tick in this line of work at Catholic Charities? How do you do this day in and day out? What drew you to this kind of work? And then have them respond for 15, 20 minutes. So it's been really surprising, eye-opening, and great to learn more about them and to have our listeners learn more about them, because so often I think, gosh, I wish everyone could see what my colleagues do day in and day out. I've always thought that. So putting my nerves aside about public speaking, it really has been a great opportunity to show our diocese and the listeners of Domestic Church Media what Catholic Charities does and why.
That's great to hear, because that was exactly what I had in mind when I created the podcast, which was to showcase different elements around the diocese. And, it really made me very happy that you gravitated to that so quickly. Now, the other person I want to chat with is Kari Janisse, because, I have a colleague in the diocese who claims I make her work harder than anybody else in the diocese, and she'd be wrong. Because the person I make work harder than anybody else is actually Kari Janisse, because I rely on her for 1,000 different things, and oftentimes at a last minute. So, Kari, I'm curious, do you regret ever becoming part of the Talking Catholic family?
No regrets, Mike, actually, no regrets. And if you think back to the very first time you said, I want to set up a meeting with you, have some ideas, and you sat down in my office and pitched all these like podcasts, YouTube channel, social media platforms. I'm like, oh gosh, this is a lot. But what I funneled it down to was my direct answer to you is, and you might remember this, I hope you do. If it's going to evangelize and help further the church, then I'm all for it. And, kind of in the last year, looking back, both being a podcast host, kind of getting thrusted into that really. And then same thing, likewise with the YouTube channel. It's actually been exciting to see how using these new media platforms can really further the church, and particularly for me, the young church, because that's where I like to serve. And a lot of my guests and just the angles I've taken on kind of sharing in the podcast have really just been from a youth-oriented angle in a little way, like, because obviously that's where my background is, but especially just in sharing that and sharing it with Youth Ministry Insights. For me, it's been actually no regrets. Actually, I'm like, wow, like I hope I get a third season. I like it. I do.
Kari, demand some money from Mike, because you're doing all this without pay.
I am the one that doesn't work for the diocese. This is true, but it's a joy. I like doing it, and it's fun. So no regrets, Mike. No regrets.
Well, Kari, it's been. Don't listen to Mary, first of all, and second of all, it's been wonderful for me because you have been able to fill one of the weak spots. For me, I know a lot about what goes on at Catholic Charities, and I know a lot about what goes on in our schools. But when it comes to parish life, that's an area where I don't get to spend a lot of time in. So for me, you being one of the co-hosts has been remarkable, and it's forced me to make friends with people that which is something I try to avoid on a regular basis. But it's been absolutely a delight to have you on. And not only that, but not just being, part of the Talking Catholic family, but quite frankly, a leader of the Talking Catholic family, someone who is constantly pushing me all the time to do more and think more and be better. And occasionally reminding me to say thank you to people for all of the hard work that they do to make Talking Catholic successful. So in many respects,
let us not forget. Wait.
Well, hold on, wait. In many respects, you are no. In many respects, you are the soul of Talking Catholic, and I want people to know that.
Well, thank you for that, Mike. But I wanted to say, furthering you in your faith, I think that is something. Remember, we pushed you for the rosary, pushed you to say some prayers before it. So I think that's the most important thing is furthering your soul in your faith.
Let's
talk about souls right here.
Let's also not talk about whether or not you were successful or not, but I totally appreciate that. At least you're trying, welcome. And I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
And Marianela Nunez, Marianela doesn't get a chance to be on the podcast as a host nearly as much as everybody else does because she works really, really hard. And we have 36 schools in the diocese, and she has to end up spending a lot of time with all of them. And as the public is well aware, there's a pandemic going on, and the Catholic Schools Office has to work really hard all the time to make sure the guidelines are being met and people are being taken care of. And in her case, with the work she does with the Latino population, that requires a lot of her time. So she hasn't been on as a host nearly as much as our two friends are, but she's done a great job bringing us stories of Hispanic culture and stories of school culture, which I really genuinely appreciate. So Marianela, thank you for always giving us whatever time you have to be a co-host on the show. I really appreciate that.
I am so happy to be part of the show. At least, the minimum times I get to be a co-host, I really enjoy. Just as Mary McCusker was saying, you don't get to listen as deeply as we can with these long conversations we have at Talking Catholic about people and what they do and why they do it. And also, I think one of the important aspects of me being part of the show and bringing the Catholic schools experience to our listeners is to keep them informed about what's going on in our schools. Why is it important that we continue to send our children to Catholic schools? And in addition, I think I really enjoy bringing the Latino culture to the show, and in a mainly Anglo show, but we also have a lot of Latinos who listen that speak English and enjoy the show. So thank you for having me, Mike.
No, it was great. And actually, Marianela, you get the privilege, I think, of getting our biggest name on the show of anyone we had when you were able to bring in Hosmer Ospina, the well-known academic who presented at the Convocation of Catholic Leaders 2 years ago, and then joined us last month, I guess it was, just to talk about Latino influence in the Catholic Church across the nation, and then certainly within our diocese. So thank you for that. That's something that I simply would not have been able to do, which is proving once again just how effective the three of you have been at bringing like really new stories and global stories that I myself, as just a dopey PR guy, would not have been able to do. So thank you very much, all three of you, for that.
How's it been for you, Mike?
Oh, it's a night.
I'm turning the tables.
Oh, that's easy. You three are a nightmare. I have no, just kidding. No, how's it been for me? The hardest part has been coming up with 200 episodes on a regular basis. I'm happy to say that in the entirety of the show, we've never missed a week with having an episode. In the early years, we would often have more than one show, or occasionally we'd have two shows in 1 week, and maybe we would, there'd be some sort of weird barrier. They didn't always come out on Mondays. It'd come out whenever we felt like it, but we always made sure we had a show before that Friday. And there are times I do miss that a little bit. But when we made the arrangement with Domestic Church Media to simulcast the show on their radio stations, I think it was a blessing, because it actually forced me to start scheduling things and thinking ahead. And I have to
we get these emails. We need a show. We need a show in 3 days. So anybody got any ideas? Anybody?
Well, as Mary knows, in the old days, that would have been 10 minutes from now. Like, oh, hey, listen, I want to do a show in 10 minutes. Bring everybody together. We want to get something done. Now I give you at least 3 days to think about it.
3 days is better. Okay, got it.
So anyway, it has forced me to sort of look at things like that. And actually, I have to give Jim Manfredonia at the Domestic Church Media a lot of credit for even considering bringing us on board of the DCM family. It's been a wonderful experience, and we've been so happy to be on radio stations throughout New Jersey. I think, actually, to the annoyance of some of my colleagues in the other dioceses, that here in humble Diocese of Camden are we being featured on a statewide showcase like Domestic Church Media. But I think a lot of it has to do with the quality of the people we bring on, and the quality of our hosts. So I'd like to think that we're bringing out a quality product to everybody. So to my three hosts, congratulations on your 1 year. I want you to know that I, for one, appreciate all of you. And I know for a fact our listeners prefer you far more than me. Probably many of our guests as well. But I think it's great. And thank you very much. Which brings me to our next section, which is some of our favorite guests. So I invited my three co-hosts to invite some of their favorite guests from the past year. And then, like I said before, I invited my least favorite guest back. So I'm going to bring everybody sort of in. If you're watching on video, I'm going to bring everybody in online, but we're on video, but we'll talk to everybody individually first. So starting with Kari, I'd like you to introduce your guests and why you decided to bring them on, other than just to troll me.
Well, you said bring a guest. I got a 2-for-1 deal here, but they're both priests, so we can't pick one priest over another. So I brought two of my very good friends, who have been featured across Talking Catholic, not just in podcasts, but also even on multiple shows that are on Talking Catholic. So Father Josh Nevitt and Father Peter Gallagher, Father Peter Gallagher joining us all the way from Rome. So thanks for being, both of you, thanks for being with us. So Father Josh, you want to say hello first, and then maybe Father Peter?
Hi, everyone. Good to be here. Every time I'm on something for the Diocese of Camden, I'm told this is your last time. You're on this way too much. No more Talking Catholic, no more YouTube shows or live streams or anything. And then somehow I get invited back. So Mike, if you could keep Kari from pulling me into this, that would be great next time.
Father Josh, I keep firing you from this, and Kari keeps inviting you back. I can't stop her, but here you are anyway. So thank you for joining us. And it is true. Kari has a habit of finding great people to be a part of the show and her personal shows. And Father Josh has done a lot of on-camera work with Kari of late, and does a great job every time. So thank you very much for being a guest on this and a guest on all of Kari's stuff. And Father Peter, just out of curiosity, what time is it in Rome right now?
That's a good question. It is 8:56 p.m. Can you believe that?
No, I cannot. Imagine this Earth being round.
It's good to be on, and I think this is primetime radio, you might say, at least for the Romans.
Well, we've heard about some of the spikes going on, the COVID spikes going on in Rome. How are you holding up with everything going on there?
Well, someone asked me yesterday, Mike, how is Italy? And I said, well, I've been outside our gate one time in the last month. So
no.
At the same time, if you know, like a high school complex, our seminary is more or less has grounds. Father Josh Nevitt would know, he was there himself. So it's really a blessing to have the grounds and to be outside and to be able to run and exercise as well as study and pray. So holding well, Mike. Thank you for asking.
Well, that's good to hear. And for anyone who hasn't heard some of the previous episodes, Father Peter is one of our two baby priests for the Diocese of Camden, but we say that endearingly. But he's definitely the babiest of all of our priests, as he's quite a young fellow as well. But now you're back at the NAC this year because you're finishing up your studies, right?
Yes. So one last year. Halfway done the first semester, one more semester to go after.
Well, I please do me the favor when you see Father Romano next to let him know that you were invited on the 200th episode of Talking Catholic and he didn't make the cut. So
I'm going to tell him exactly that.
Or maybe Mike, a Talking Catholic field trip to Rome to visit Father Peter Gallagher.
I would go for that, nice. Mary.
I'm down.
You are very
Mike, you don't even have to come. We would do it for you. With no problem.
Great point.
The only reason I joined the diocese was to figure out some way of wiggling my way into a trip to Rome, and I've been unsuccessful for 5 straight years. So if this is what it takes.
Ask Donna.
Yeah, well, Donna had to pay her way, but we'll see. I got to figure it out for free. So, Mary, now you invited a special guest, and probably if you hadn't invited him, he would have been my invitation onto the podcast because I always enjoy having him on. But whom did you invite on today's podcast?
I invited Kevin Hickey, Executive Director of Catholic Charities, Diocese of Camden. And when you said pick one guest, I mean, it was just a given to me. He's the heart of Catholic Charities. And, in addition to all of the work he does, he has a way of keeping all of us at Catholic Charities, grounded in Catholic social teaching, reminding us of our mission. And I think every other day I get either a link to some fascinating article. Sometimes a book will just be sitting on my desk, and I don't know if that's my homework for the night or what, but he has a great way of just keeping all of our staff motivated and grounded, especially during a year as crazy as this one. So welcome, Kevin. Thank you so much for joining us.
Figure it out. Thank you, Mary. That was, well, I'm not surprised. You are one of the most gracious people I've ever met. So I thank you for that. That was a really gracious introduction.
Yeah, it's one of her more annoying characteristics.
I was waiting for some comment from you, Mike. Kevin, can you tell us what's behind you?
Well, I'll credit Mike Walsh. This is Mother Teresa. It's an icon that's actually usually in our boardroom. We have a number of icons in there. And so this is, and of course it's dated, says Mother Teresa of Calcutta. And of course she's now Saint Teresa of Calcutta. So as I said, Mary, can I just say something? I want to compliment Mike as I'm looking at all these people who I recognize from all their YouTube and various social media appearances on the diocesan platforms. Mike, I just really, you've done tremendous work here in bringing this church, the Diocese of Camden, into the 21st century. And using all the different technologies that are available that really the Pope Benedict and Pope Francis now, talked about that the church had to do this. So it's just tremendous what you've been able to accomplish. And of course, I feel Catholic Charities is deeply in your debt because of what you did for our JFA virtual event this year. So anyways, congratulations, Mike, and congratulations on 200 episodes of this podcast.
Kevin, that's very kind of you to say. Thank you very much. You can also now, everyone can understand why I was going to invite him on if Mary didn't. He says nice things about me, undeservedly usually.
But the question is, can you actually take a compliment, Mike, without firing back with something snippy?
I'm doing my best, but
So
thankfully, Mary, you got to me before I was going to say something horrific to follow that with. But it is true, Kevin. I've said this to you on multiple occasions, and I've said this to Mary every time she has a bad day. The work I do with Catholic Charities, I rely on you guys when I have a bad day. I spend a lot of time in crisis communications, and the Catholic Church has been under the gun now for quite a while by a lot of outside entities, and sometimes it can weigh on me after a while. And it's good to be reminded of the good work that Catholics do throughout the diocese to help people. And I think it's something that needs to be reminded. And so for me, it's been very easy to go out there on a regular basis and showcase Catholic Charities wherever I can, because quite frankly, I know how to create a dog and pony show, but as we used to say in the old job, we're not saving babies in the PR department, but very much so in Catholic Charities, as well as in our parishes and our schools. We are very much saving babies. So, I will always jump to the forefront to showcase all of you whenever you do good work. And then whenever you screw up, I'll definitely tar and feather you. But, for the most part, you guys have all been doing a great job. So keep up the good work, everybody. And then our penultimate guest is invited by Marianela. And Marianela, who did you bring on?
So I brought Mary Beth Peabody, who is the Marketing and Communications Manager for the Catholic Schools Office. So she has been wonderful with us, even helping us bring the best stories to Talking Catholic around, our schools. And I'm very grateful for, the work Mary Beth has been doing, bringing our Catholic schools together as a big umbrella that we are here in the diocese. And she's done a tremendous job, in our social media platforms and, just telling the stories. And it's really great to read her stories in the Star Herald and everywhere around the diocese. I think she's really being wonderful with us. So thank you for being here, Mary Beth, and welcome to the show one more time.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I was very honored, Marianela. You had lots of people to choose from. So.
You're my favorite.
Well, thank you.
So, Mary Beth, you've been someone that I've worked with now for 4 years, I guess.
4.5, yeah.
4.5 years. And I've come to rely on you all the time for a lot of stuff that we do related to schools, because I simply can't be out in the schools very much. So as the marketing manager for the schools department, you have been one of those absolutely integral links that I have to the outside world. And of course, as I, noted earlier when introducing Marianela, you've had one heck of the last 9 months now. And I have to give a lot of credit to the schools department that for all of the insanity that we've been going through related to the pandemic, the work being done in the schools office and in the schools themselves has been exemplary. So how are you holding up 9 months into the insanity that we live in?
Well, I feel sort of insulated from the real heat of it, because my job is to sort of report what other people are doing. And so that, to me, it's probably been the most proud work I've ever done, because the people who I work with are just incredible. Our superintendent, Bill Watson, has been an amazing leader. Watching him in action with our principals, he has this way of he learns, he's a real learner, and he's a real communicator. So when you really know what you're talking about and you talk about it well, that is a winning combination. And he just brings a level of calm and guidance, the likes of which I've never seen. And then there is just watching our principals who, we've been having weekly conversations with them since March, and they rely on each other. They support each other. They give each other ideas. In another world, they're sort of competing for students, but they're just all together in this. And it has been an extraordinary experience. So
I concur. I have to give a lot of credit to Bill and quite frankly, the entire schools office, because I know it's not just Bill, but Bill has definitely, in a world turned upside down, Bill has shown incredible stability, which happens to be, I think, a character trait of people in leadership positions who do really great work. I have to give Kevin similar kudos, because those are two gentlemen that I work with on a regular basis with Catholic Charities and Catholic schools, who are quite frankly unflappable when it comes to this stuff, at least publicly. Privately, I've seen them flap, but publicly, completely unflappable. And as Kevin shakes his head vigorously. I, on the other hand, am flapping around here all over the place, because
I can vouch for that.
Yes. Mary recently witnessed me absolutely losing it on something related to, I don't remember what.
It was like Office Space style, Mike freaking out. I wish I recorded it. Would have been a great addition to our YouTube feed.
That would have been amazing.
Our PR director, everyone.
But only behind the scenes. So my guest for today, so I asked everyone to invite their favorites on. I actually invited my third favorite on. Mary already invited my first. My second was actually two people, and they couldn't make it. I was going to bring Jose. They couldn't. I didn't even ask them, because it had to be Jose and Star, who's on our YouTube channels, and they are the most adorable couple.
They're the best.
Exactly, right? Aren't they the best? If you've never seen their show, Keeping It Catholic, on our YouTube show, you really got to check it out. So even in absentia, I am going to promote Jose and Star, which meant I had to invite the ever-present Donna Ottaviano-Britt, whom I lovingly, in air quotes, refer to as my frenemy. Hey, Donna.
What a warm welcome, Mike. Wow.
Don't you think? I figured that. He set it up at the beginning of the episode. He invited one of his least favorite people. I'm like, well, by the time we get to it, they'll all know it's me.
I wanted you to make sure you were prepared.
That is not fair for Donna. Come on, do the nice introduction the communications director would do.
Oh, listen. Donna gives as good as she takes. You don't need to worry about Donna. If I didn't think Donna could take it, I wouldn't say it. She is, quite frankly, she is the best, and is one of those people that keeps me on track constantly. She and I have been thrown in together on a number of occasions where something that had never been done before needed to be created, and the powers that be said, hey, Mike and Donna, can you go do this? And we look at each other and go, all right.
Okay, let's try. Let's see what we get. So that's the way that it's been.
You knock it out of the park always.
That depends, unless I'm following you, Kari, in the social media space, but I'll let the golden child go ahead of me.
So Donna is our director of missionary discipleship and leadership in the Diocese of Camden. She's also one of the co-hosts on the Talking Catholic YouTube channel. She has Joyful Disciples, and she is in fact a very joyful disciple who I willingly invite back on the show all the time, because like Kari, she has a habit of filling that space that I simply don't possess, which is a pastoral nature in any way, shape, or form. Whereas I might let all of you burn to the ground, she will want to save all of your souls. So Donna, thank you, number one, for always saying yes to me whenever I ask you to do something. And two, for always being willing to come on the show, particularly if it's a topic that I know I am really not strong on. And you always add such a great level of knowledge and pastoral nature that I ain't got. So thank you.
Did you notice that backhand compliment I just got, everybody? Like, boom, boom.
That was a front-handed compliment.
Well, thanks for the invite, Mike. I do appreciate it. And I think you have really across all of your co-hosts, this is the 200th episode. I think that the Diocese of Camden, I'm not giving you a compliment now, but under your leadership, I think producing some tremendous content for Catholics across the region and probably beyond that. But I really think there's some excellent content that's actually being produced here for all the swaths of Catholics we have, across the diocese, for young people, for young church. I know we've already plugged Star and Jose, but looking at what Kari does, look what's going on in the schools, look at the work of Catholic Charities, looking at the work that our good and holy priests do. And I'm not saying it because two of them are here. But I really think that this is a great platform with which to evangelize. So I think it's really, and I'm honored to be here among these people, except for you, Mike.
That is, as always, the correct response. Thank you, Donna.
Mm-hmm.
So Kari and I were kind of talking about how to set up this episode. And as always, Kari's got a lot of ideas. She'll give me like a ton of them, and I'll be like, oh, 10% of those are really good. But actually, the reality is 100% of them are all really good. I'm just 90% lazy. So one of the things we were talking about for today is, some of our favorite moments from the past year. So Kari, since you kind of put that thought in my head, you've been doing episodes now since October of 2019. Has anything particularly jumped out at you that you were at least pleased that we were able to put together?
Yeah, well, so many. It's just a joy to do each one, and every one is unique unto itself. But there's one that definitely rises to the top, and I apologize because some of my guests are on here with us, and it doesn't include any of you. But when we were able to have worldwide Catholic speaker Paul J. Kim come on to a podcast, for me that. It was exciting. It was the first time I got really nervous because I don't generally get nervous to do the podcast, just to not mess up the opening, truth be told. That's always just let me get through the opening and then I'm good for the other 54 minutes. But besides that, Paul J. Kim, I did have a sense of nervousness only because he is so well renowned and just known for his work, especially if you talk to any of the youth. They know him, but even just not even just youth, but he's a Catholic evangelizer. And when we were able to, as I said, score him for a podcast, I was so excited because he was coming to do a mission at our church and give a talk there. But I kind of was like, well, since you're going to be here, is there any way you can do a podcast first? And he agreed to it. And I was just totally delighted, excited. And like I said, nervous at the same time. But for me, that was definitely a highlight looking over the past year. And that was in March. Just this past year now, and it was right before everything kind of changed in a different way. So it was also kind of like a marking point in my life as to, I guess, if you have it when things were normal to when things started to really change over to the new norm as we kind of know it as. So for me, that was definitely a high point. The high.
That was a fun episode because he is definitely a character, and I hadn't been aware of him prior to that, and I was really blown away, not just by his personality, but then later on when you had your mission, what he was able to do was really, truly amazing. So Mary, what about you? What over the last year kind of jumped out at you? Now you've actually been on a lot of episodes of Talking Catholic because you were, as we all know, you were officially you were the test subject of our first podcast, which I still have recorded and will someday.
And I'll
break
find a
out.
way to delete it, and so
Oh, it's
that
in the
it's
cloud.
gone from
Okay.
cyberspace.
But you know, as one of the bosses, how have you, any of the particular episodes jump out at you in the last year?
Well, I prepared for this question in advance, and honestly, you said something earlier about it's like herding cats with all of you, referring to the hosts, and that's kind of how I feel when I bring Catholic Charities staff on, especially because they are all so infuriatingly humble. They don't like to talk, you know, that much about their work. Some of them are camera shy, or, you know, they're used to one-on-one interactions with clients. And you add to that the fact that I don't like voluntold.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't like, you know, forcing people to come on. But like I said earlier, it's important for people to know about what they do, and it kind of gives them a voice to talk about their work and their services. And this year in particular, you know, was a crisis in South Jersey and so many other places. And, you know, we hear a lot about, you know, the obvious toll that the pandemic has had with the loss of lives. And then we hear a lot about the other ripple effects of that. You know, people losing their jobs, people who weren't previously food insecure now have to choose between food and medications, and the increase in domestic violence. And for each one of these subjects, I think we were able to bring on staff members who were able to talk about them. And one that jumps out was having Sylvia Lemo and Jose Sanchez talk about domestic violence just this month, or no, last month during
October,
Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And, you know, just some of the misconceptions, the myths, the realities. It was a difficult one to hear, but an important one. As always, Kevin has been a great guest, no matter what the topic is. I know when we were preparing for our JFA virtual awards ceremony, he was able to talk about that, our honorees, and why we were honoring them. So to me, getting a staff member to commit to going on this Talking Catholic podcast is a victory. Like I said, they don't do any of their work to seek attention or praise. So they've all been really, really great.
Yeah, I agree. I always enjoy. We've done a lot of Catholic Charities episodes, and it's one of the things that I've never worried about doing too often, because I genuinely don't think you can talk about the work of Catholic Charities enough in what we do. And the same is true of schools and our parishes. But as someone who regularly needs their soul refilled with some good news that doesn't necessarily come out of the Bible, it means a lot to me. I know that when I said that, wow, that's already inarticulate. Now it sounds sacrilegious. So
they actually come out of the Bible, Mike.
No. Good news does come out of the Bible. What about sort of incarnate that surrounds us, not just what's in the Bible, but proving.
I hope you got Kevin Hickey nodding his head as you were talking.
I see Kevin laughing over there. Yep.
This is why we need to bring on all of our guests, because I shouldn't be allowed to speak.
Mike is hysterical, but I'm one of my favorite moments with Mike. I'm not sure. I'm going to rely on him to cue me as to how far I should go in telling the story. Was actually an exchange of Christmas Day messages. Michael, you might remember this. This is going back a number of years. I think it might have been 2014 or 15.
Yeah.
And can I keep going, Michael?
Sure, go ahead. You can tell the story.
All right.
I stand
Grab
by
your
it.
popcorn, everyone.
He sends me an email on Christmas morning, and he says, "Congratulations, Catholic Charities Diocese of Camden is in the lead editorial of the Newark Star Ledger." Now, this was following on the heels of some, high heat in the politics of refugee resettlement. And this was actually the first time I'd worked with Mike, and I found it vastly annoying on many levels. and part of it was, of course, I recognized part of the annoyance was, okay, this guy's really good. He knows what he's talking about, which of course is annoying to someone who's, everything.
I know the feeling. I get it all the time, Kevin.
Yeah. So, so he sends me this email, and so I write him back, and I just acknowledging his, his help and his competence and his understanding of all these different issues, including crisis communications. But then I acknowledge that he's annoying me, and most of the time I want to drop kick him into the next week. So he writes back, and one of the great comments of all time, again on Christmas morning, he sort of says, yes, I enjoy working with you too, but mostly I'd like to bury you up to your neck in sand and leave you there. So I thought, okay, this is a good relationship, I guess.
Very healthy
Yeah,
co-working relationship we have between the communications department and Catholic Charities. But like Kevin says, that's the mutual respect. Now you all understand that when I'm insulting you as my co-host, this is how I'm showing my love to you. So thank you once again. Thank you all for being a part of this. I appreciate it. Father Peter and Father Josh Nevitt are probably sitting there going, God, we got to really work on these guys' souls. I don't know what's wrong with these people.
We're caring for you every day, Mike.
Thank you.
The whole diocese
all of it
should be with your job.
It's been a year. The Marianela, what any particular memories for you over the last year?
Yeah, I think definitely two stand out, and one of it was like before the school year started, we had a podcast with our superintendent Bill Watson regarding what were we doing in terms of schools for this year, and Mary Beth Peabody was also part of that podcast where we were telling people. I think one of the most important messages in many years about schools, like we are going to have schools and they're going to be open for your children in person, and this is how we're going to do it. And, I kind of like started to have children and realized that once they go to school, they just go to school, and there's so many years of schools and that just flows. And I think this year has gotten people to realize that, things can happen, and they are, unprecedented things happening now. And I think the fact that, we were able to inform our population about, what the schools were doing and how we were going to do it safely was really a rewarding experience for me to see that, we had been doing the work to make sure that our kids are back in school and that they're safe. And so far it's November 18 and we are really, proud of the work being done in the schools. The children have been phenomenal, and the teachers are just helping us out and further in the mission. And I think, that's what we are about. And I don't know if Mary Beth would like to sort of give us a few points on that, because she's been really an integral part of this.
Sure. Yeah, I think by the time we rolled it out, we were really ready. And I know that Mike and I didn't always agree on when we should be communicating different things. And I thought maybe we should be doing more sooner. And in retrospect, that was everything we did, I feel, was just right. It wasn't too soon. It wasn't too late. There was certainly not that there was a lack of transparency all along. It was just getting everything in line, because we were really going to be looked at as examples of how this thing works. Because, as the time got closer, it was clear that there were going to be more restrictions on public schools than non-public schools. And so I feel like by the time we did that podcast, we were really ready to say, this is it. This is that we're going. And,
Yeah.
As Marianela said, it has worked really well, not without just an absolutely overwhelming amount of work on the part of our teachers, principals. It's been huge. And not that there has not been COVID, which is also really important, because that's also been managed really well.
Yes.
It's the contact tracing has worked. It's, isolating the right people, quarantining the right people. And it's, it's been very real. It's
Yeah.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to something we talked about earlier, which was this had never been tried before. So, Mary Beth sort of talked about how I was sort of taking a conservative approach to it, and the reason I was so conservative about it was because I didn't want to get ahead over our skis. But the truth of the matter is, everything that the schools department has done so far, we're recording this on November 18th. Has been exemplary for the schools, and I think has allowed them to reopen. And everything the schools have done, of course, themselves has allowed this to happen. So I think there's a lot of credit that needs to go there. And I'm hoping that by the end of this school year, we'll be in a different place. Vaccines will be out. We'll be, the second or third wave, whatever we're in right now, will be over, and maybe we can pat ourselves on the back then. But at the moment, I do think that everyone has done the best that can be done in these situations, imperfect as it may be, but the best that can be done. So I kind of want to go back to something Kevin talked about earlier, which was giving me, unfortunately, a lot of undue credit, other than me pushing people in the right direction, which tends to be what my job is. Of the 8 people on this podcast and YouTube show at the moment, right now, every single one of you has taken the reins of moving to the online world when you absolutely had to, when we all shut down in March. Father Peter Gallagher finished his studies, was placed in a new parish, and the first thing he does when he's in a new parish, he creates an A to Z video series all about little elements of parish life. And I found it totally enjoyable. It was, each episode was a little different, and he literally went A, B, C, D, and through the line, and gave you a little insight about this little element of parish life. And Father Peter, I want to sort of congratulate you about that, because it was so interesting and so well done. And I apologize for using this particular word to you, but adorable. It was genuinely enjoyable. So, like, how did you come up with that idea, and how did you pick your A through Z's?
Yeah, Mike, I was inspired by Father Josh Nevitz, former spiritual director, who in the past did this at his parish it was actually even done as a way to end Mass quicker. So he said, I'll preach for 1 minute and then teach for 5 minutes after Mass. But I think he packaged it well. I think, Mike, you do that well too. Oh. And so I think we can always learn a little bit more about our faith, and to do it in a way that you are sort of like wanting to learn more. You're like, oh, what's going to happen tomorrow? I thank my seminary training and a couple Wikipedia searches for Catholic. Yeah, like figuring out the odd letters, but maybe it'll be coming back sooner than you think, Mike.
Ooh.
There's things.
Father, what was X in your video series? I'm just curious now.
Father, Saint Francis Xavier. So
naturally.
So, yeah, naturally, Mike. I mean, just out of it. So I think, but thanks for liking it, and I think, as Kari said, and on our previous episodes, just wanting to serve the best way we can, learn more about the spiritual life, grow closer to God. So little bits and pieces, as much as we can do.
And I spotlighted Father Peter because he doesn't do enough talking on these shows. So, but each of you actually have done something similar. So Kevin greenlights this crazy idea we have to do a virtual Justice for All dinner. We record it and put it out in the span of 2.5 weeks, and John Kalitz and Mary McCusker and Dave Hernandez in my department all deserve all the credit for how they were able to pull that together, and Mary getting everyone together to make it happen, and Kevin actually agreeing to it and hosting it. So we create that, and then we sort of create this Talking Catholic video series, but on their own, Donna and Kari find different ways of expanding on it. Donna goes on a 10-day retreat to the Holy Land and Italy and ends up recording all these episodes while she's there. Kari has developed these midweek motivation series, which I absolutely love watching. I try never to miss them live if I can. As a matter of fact, you had Father Josh Nevitt on today. I encourage you to watch the Instagram version, not the Facebook version. A little technical difficulties with the Facebook version, but all Father Nevitt's fault, of course. Because Kari does everything right. But it's just great. She does this little 10 minutes that she does on Facebook Live and Instagram Live, where she just has a sit-down conversation with someone. They talk. It's just like a little midweek pump up. A little dose of spirituality, and then ends with a sort of motivational background. Kari, like how did you develop that as a midweek motivation or the midweek motivation?
Well, truth be told, Mike, you said, Talking Catholic host, you need to do more Facebook and Instagram lives. And I was like,
oh, so it's my fault.
How could I do this? And you know, it actually kind of cool, like a little God incidents or like little Holy Spirit moment. Lex Kiefer, who's another Talking Catholic host, and she was my first one, and it was really just the midweek motivation was just really about her little clip, and I was like, you know what, I kind of like the sound of that. Like I just kind of named it for her, just was going to do a one-time thing and then see where it went. And I thought, you know, I like the sound of this. Let's like just keep going. It happened to be on a Wednesday. Let's just go every Wednesday now with it. And it just was easy to roll it out from there. So I had each of the Talking Catholic hosts from the YouTube channel on. They were all wonderful, including Donna, who's on this call today. She was great. She was actually the second one that came on. And then from there, I was like, you kind of just a span of people that work in our diocese, other youth ministers within our diocese, outside of our diocese, people I have known from different paths of youth ministry, young adult ministry that I've been on. And it's really turned into something fun that I enjoy scheduling each week as part of my Wednesday routine. So it's been nice to just get different people out there and get different perspectives. Most importantly, get that little spiritual dose each week. And I enjoy like hearing from them. What is your favorite spiritual quote or thing you want to share with us? So it's been nice. It's been a lot of fun.
Kari, I love that it's midweek motivation. I'm used to Monday motivation hashtag, but everyone needs a little boost midweek. So That is awesome.
Thank you.
Right.
And then Mary Beth, something that you worked on this year was sort of in anticipation of opening the schools. You and Dave Hernandez and the superintendent of schools, Bill Watson, ended up putting together all of these sort of like little video snippets, little news articles of what each of the schools was doing. And we had never done anything. I had to actually build a YouTube page for the Catholic Star Herald so that we had some place to put these things. But I got a lot of feedback from parents who said that it really made a big difference in calming their nerves to physically see what was going on in the schools to prepare to reopen. And I thought the way it was handled was brilliantly. So kudos to you and Bill and Dave.
Thank you. That was fun and really informative. So we discovered what a natural bill is. We started to call it Tuesdays with Bill, or Tuesdays with Bill and Dave. But they would literally, he committed to blocking out time on Tuesdays, and we would pick a topic and look at a school who was sort of right in the middle of that topic. Like we did Our Lady of Hope. They were upgrading their technology. So we went and just did a little segment about technology and what that was going to look like. And we tried to have parents who were on the task force there to kind of weigh in. And so they were fun. They were breaking news stories.
Yeah, I really thought that I thought they were recorded really well, and they were nice and tight. They were only like 2-3 minutes, easy to watch, distributed them everywhere. And I think they really worked. So next time we have a crisis situation of that scenario, I'm definitely going to use that technique going forward for lots of things. But Dave Hernandez actually.
We love Dave.
His
voice is amazing.
Yeah, he really does a wonderful job with that.
I'm hearing all of these different ideas, and I kind of want to just steal them all and bring them to Catholic Charities, because I know after this call, Kevin is going to say, why aren't we doing this stuff?
Thank God the CEO is here, so he can approve them right away, Mary.
Mary, you could get something every day of the week based off of this. So you
exactly
could go 7 days a week and be the new point to look up to.
See, this is the
I'll
thing.
take all the credit too.
Donna is always criticizing me for forcing people to do these things. But the truth of the matter is yes, that's exactly right. We can be doing all of this stuff. Because I'll tell you, we've talked a lot about, all these things that we've created over the last year. Do you know how much money I actually spent on any of this stuff? $2,000 total. $2,000 with all of the content that we've created. Now, there are salaries involved for people on staff that we already have and stuff like that. But the only thing that I've added from, that's right, Kari, I talked to doing this for free. I should give her some credit. But that's part of my special thing, is convincing people to do things for free. But the reality is, if you have the desire to do this, it is possible to do it. All you need is the time, a little bit of ability, because let's face it, when all of these things started, they were okay. Now, Kari has probably the best looking YouTube show that we have. The way she lights it and puts stuff in the background is phenomenal. Donna's always trying to do new things that drive me insane, because I'm like, well, we can do that one better if we do it this way. And she'll just go rogue and do it on her own. And then I'll go back and be like, you know what? I like that idea. Here's an idea of how we can improve it. So I think these things are good. So, one of the things I wanted to talk about was things in the future. But the truth of the matter is that what I found is a lot of the stuff has happened organically. And I think that's a good thing, that we've been creating all of these things all along, and creating new and different ideas and making them very successful. So Mary, yes, steal every idea you've heard, and Kari, steal every idea you've heard, and Father Josh and Father Peter, take all these ideas to your current and future parishes with things that are all incredibly capable. Because the other thing that I've learned is that this expertise resides in all of our parishes. We just need to find it. It resides in our parishes, it resides in our ministries, it resides in our schools. You just have to make the effort to try and find it. And then, and I have to give a lot of credit to Bishop Sullivan and Father Robert Hughes, our Vicar General, who allows me to try all of these insane ideas just because they know I'm going to try and do it well. They haven't all been successful. We've had a couple of, stumbles along the road, but I'm willing to fail a couple of times if we can create successes. So, I haven't done any of this stuff. I'm not a video editor. I don't do any of that. I certainly shouldn't be talking into a microphone. I apologize to the listeners for having to subject you to this every week. Of the 200 episodes we've done, I've been on 198 of them. Find the 2 that I wasn't on, and those will be better. But, I encourage everyone to keep trying new things for all the right reasons, and you will find some form of success in doing it. So we are running a little long on this episode, but Kari specifically requested that I ask what everybody's favorite oof was. I'm assuming she's referring to screw-ups over the past year with the Talking Catholic stuff that we've done. So Kari, do you have any screw-ups in mind from yours?
Well, it's funny, like I mentioned that, then I was like, well, what do I want to mention about that? And I'll be totally transparent here. For me, it's not so much like a particular oof. It's like sometimes I use a word incorrectly, and I go back and I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have used that word. It wasn't like the right context. And I get mad at myself, and I'm like trying to then repair it. So it's, total transparency here is like just wrong use of words. Sometimes I get, upset later about it, but nobody knows because it just goes on in my head. So there you go. There's my oofs.
That is a very consistent problem, Kari. I do the same thing. As you all heard.
Except, Mike, you can edit your own mistakes out, but you won't edit any of our mistakes out, as you made clear.
That's because I'm evil. I've only edited myself twice in 2 of the episodes. One, I said a word that could have been construed as a curse word, so I
remember.
Good point.
And once I had to re-record an intro because I botched the original intro so badly. But
lest we forget your internet when it just cut out and left me alone with the guest, not knowing what to do.
Yeah, the internet that's the thing that's amazing. So we've done all these different online things over the past 9 months, and with the exception of a couple of our live streams that I did with Donna and Kari, for the most part, our Zoom calls have held out, except for that one occasion. Mary, were there any other oofs that you could think of from the past year?
I never listened to the podcast after recording. I can't stand the sound of my voice. I find 1,000 errors It makes me want to just stop talking right now, but
And yet you never do.
I'm sure there's about 10 in every episode that we've recorded, that I've made.
How about you, Marianela? Any concerns of our products in the past?
Well, I guess, sometimes when it comes to the intro part, I agree with Kari. That's like the most nerve-wracking part. Once I pass that, I'm fine too. But sometimes I forget to mention who is hosting the show. And Mike, like, Marianela, you did it again, and you didn't say our names. And I'm Mike. And then, with my English as a second language, sometimes I don't find the words that I want to say. So Mike has to help me out sometimes with those.
Well, English is my first language, and I still have to fumble with words all the time too.
Same. Mm-hmm.
And to our guests, were there anything on any of our videos or podcasts that you guys have watched in the last couple of years that you either like, dislike, or thought we could improve upon? Donna, perhaps?
The one that I remember best is when the churches were closed, we were doing on that live streaming 4 nights a week. So Father Peter, you'll remember this. So remember when the internet went out at Holy Family, right as we were going live. So I'm sitting there on the microphone and I'm doing the whole introduction, and all of a sudden there's movement all behind it. That I think no one can see. All of a sudden they're getting Father Peter out of his seat and going around behind all the cameras. And I just keep talking into the camera, and they let me, Mike and John, they let me keep talking. So I'm doing the whole thing and trying to be smooth. Like this is live TV kind of thing. So I'm doing it. And finally Mike says, after like 6 minutes of my intro, he's like, you can stop now. Right?
That sounds like Mike and John. Yep.
Yeah. Here we like, I don't know, whatever the technical term is for it, but apparently Father Picnic was having a big Zoom meeting and it was killing our broadband. So like Father Peter had to go ask Father Picnic, like, hey, can you like stop your meeting so we can live stream? So that would be one of my like funnier moments, like talking away. And all of a sudden I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of activity behind these lights and cameras. I wonder what's going on.
Yeah, I kind of feel bad for Donna because at some point she's going to retire from the diocese, and John and I have all this video footage of her.
Oh, the B-roll is going to be bad.
Yeah, when she doesn't realize she's on camera and we still captured her. Yeah, there's going to be a going away video of her that is going to be hysterical someday.
I never really need to see it. I don't need to see it.
There's going to be so many air clips
that I do.
Donna, what's amazing then is that you'll always work for the diocese. You'll never get to retire.
The best way to never see it.
Oh, exactly.
Retire, she'll volunteer just like Kari.
Oh, yeah.
I can't speak for the rest of the diocese, but I'm not above blackmail to keep good people here. So
I had no idea that we had 7 weeks of that from the spring. Those cameras were always rolling. So Don Kalitz will be my best friend forever, so he doesn't create anything.
Donna, I'm sorry. I just think it was hysterical that Mike and John love to pick on you about the microphone. And I blameworthy myself because I don't speak loud anyway. So we're in the same boat.
Yeah. Speak louder.
That's true. All of you have disappointed John and I at some point. It's perfectly fine. But we are perfectionists. It shouldn't be allowed to be around other human beings. Well, thank you all for joining us today for the special 200th episode. I hope our listeners enjoyed the sort of behind the scenes view of everything. Certainly, I hope people will listen to it as part of the podcast. And obviously, I hope people will go to the YouTube page to see it. And more importantly, when you go to our YouTube page, make sure you watch all the other shows we have produced. And I would encourage if you, as I keep playing with my AirPods because they don't fit in my ears right. If I encourage all of you to suggest new ideas for shows for us, whether they be podcasts or YouTube shows or something else entirely, because I'm always willing to try new things when it comes to spreading the good news of the church, whether it be in our schools, our churches, or in our Catholic Charities or any of the other ministries. So all of you, I want to thank you specifically for coming on today. To my co-hosts, thank you very much for doing all the hard work with all of our podcasts so I can just show up and record it and make you guys look as good as I can. And to our listeners, thank you for listening to these things, and our watchers and watching our stuff, because it really means a lot to us. And we don't do it for ourselves. Nobody's making any extra money out of this. Ask any single one of the people on this show. Nobody's getting a dime out of it. we literally do it just for the people of the good and faithful of the community. So, and not just in the Camden Diocese, we hope people around the world will watch this. So thank you all very much and have a great rest of your week. And we'll see you again next week. Thank you, everybody.
God bless.
Bye.